Howdy.
Thank you all for coming out tonight on this really chilly, cold, rainy, yucky night. Welcome to Startup Grind. We're going to start with kind of a warm-up. We usually start with 2 or 3 pitches. We've got 4 tonight. They're 1-minute pitches. Gives you all a chance to see what some of our students are working on. Why don't you start, Max?
Okay. My name is Max Jackson. I'm president of Freedom Built for Contracting, which sounds super boring. It isn't, but it is. But anyway, I'm part of Startup Aggieland here. It's fantastic. We just had an incredible amount of opportunities after we got accepted. But basically, what we do is anything from lawn care to like landscaping to interior remodels or building new houses or tearing down old houses, anything like that. We're moving into commercial construction here in a few months, and hopefully expanding to Austin in the next year or 2. But that's what we've got going on. There's a lot more in the mix, but that's basically it for now.
Howdy. Javier Cepeda, class of 16, president of Good Bull Parking. We're the first valet company here in town. Been around for a year now, been all over. We've done country clubs, restaurants, grand openings. We're at St. Joseph's Hospital Monday through Friday, providing the service for their guests. Do about 60 cars a week, or 60 cars a day rather. And we were just accepted into Startup Aggieland this past semester. It's been phenomenal being here, working with other students that have their own ideas and their own businesses that they want to do. It's just incredible, and we get to feed off of each other's knowledge and brain. So it's really cool. Thank you guys for coming out. It's great to see everybody here.
Hello, my name is Austin Holland. I'm working on Tackle Tape, which is a new product for coaches to be able to identify which football players and when they've been hit in the head. We believe this will help parents also verify the safety of their young athletes during practice. And with these 2 things, we hope to improve the safety of football. Tackle Tape works by combining pressure-sensitive, color-changing materials into football helmet decals. That way, whenever kids are hit in the head, a visual indication is provided to the coaches, and then the coaches know exactly which kids need to correct their technique to improve their safety. Working here at Startup Aggieland has been great. As was mentioned earlier, being able to feed off the energy of all the other student entrepreneurs here has been quite amazing. And the connections they help here is really good.
Howdy. Howdy. I'm Walker Ryan, and I'm the co-founder of Vitals Outdoors.
Co-founder as well, William Tyndall, senior petroleum engineer here.
And our company is Vitals Outdoors, and we're currently focused on developing a lifestyle branding company for the hunting gear accessories market. And so we've got a couple of products in the mix right now. We're currently pushing one, and that's a bow grip that helps with your form. If you want to explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so basically the way this is kind of taking the ground is through a bow grip. It's just a grip that you attach to a compound bow. And we've really kind of focused on getting our wooden handmade prototype right now, to getting that to where we can 3D print it and CAD design and everything. So right now we're in the prototyping phase and hoping to get that to the market as soon as possible.
We've had a blast working here at Startup Aggieland. Aggieland, everyone's super passionate about everything that they do here, and so it's cool, just like all the other guys have said, to kind of feed off of that energy, come here and get to learn a lot of cool things that I think we're going to be able to utilize through the process of these companies, as well as well on into our future. So I'm excited to hear the talk tonight.
Proud to be here. Thank y'all.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you
all we
guys.
got. Thank you.
Well, I get to introduce our MC for the evening. His father, Rick Tankersley, played football under Coach Slocum, and as a freshman, he co-founded a startup called Shadowbox Media here at Startup that in January received funding and has graduated from the Startup Aggieland program. I would like to now introduce Austin Tankersley for our MC, and oddly enough, I knew him in high school, and just like his father, people gave him the nickname Tank on the football team, and everybody in school called him that. So let's give him a hand.
How y'all doing? Well, welcome to Startup Grind at Startup Aggieland. We're one of 150 chapters worldwide. We're the only student-run one in the whole world. Today we have a special guest with us, Hall of Fame coach R.C. Slocum. He's the most winningest coach in all of Texas A&M football history. So we want to welcome to the stage. Give him a round of applause, please.
Okay, howdy.
Howdy.
Sit in.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
All right, start off, just give us a little bit about your background here at A&M, and then you can get into what you're going to be talking about today.
Well, I came here 1972, December of 72, and as a way of introduction, I can tell you that because it may be helpful to you. I was assistant coach at Kansas State, and I came home for Christmas. My home was in Orange, Texas. So I came home, and I'm telling this story to show how when you're a young guy, young lady, just turning over stones. You never know which one of them you're going to find something under, but you got to turn over, just do it constantly. And then if you do, you'll find things. So during the season, I had kept up with the other coaches, and I kept up with the coaching scuttlebutt. And the rumor was that Emory Ballard, who was an assistant coach, the offensive coordinator, inventor of the wishbone at the University of Texas, that he was going to get a head coaching job. And I was at Kansas State, been there a couple of years, but grew up in Texas, from Texas, and aspired to get back here and coach. So, upon hearing that rumor, I wrote him a letter. I didn't know him, had never met him. I just wrote him a long letter, introductory type letter, told him who I was, what I was doing, my background from Texas, and that I'd like to be considered if he did in fact take a head coaching job here. At that time, it's rumored he might get the Baylor job. It looked like it was going to come open. Never heard anything back. He was busy coaching. I came home Christmas. A lot of people after a long football season would have likely just sat around and visited with old friends and family and took it easy. But I was wound like you people are wound. So that was it for me. So I got up, I got home one day. The next day I get up. One of my high school coaches was an assistant at the University of Houston, and they were preparing, they were having bowl practices in preparation to play the University of Colorado, the Blue Bonnet Bowl at that time. So I get up, drive to Houston, go to their morning practice, and watch them work out, trying to learn some football, at the same time trying to network with one of the few contacts that I had at that time in my network. And so after that practice, I went with him to get some lunch. We kind of got off to the side, and I said, look, I'll tell you a secret, you can't let it out. But as soon as the game's over, we're leaving. Emory Ballard is getting the Texas A&M job. And the defensive coordinator at Houston at that time was a guy named Melvin Robertson. My friend's name is Ben Hurt. He said, we're both leaving. We're going with Emory to A&M as soon as the game's over, but you can't. He said, tomorrow they're going to announce it's going to be Emory's first day on the job. I said, really? I said, God, I wrote him a letter. I said, I never heard anything back, but man, I'd love to go with y'all. They said, well, you can use us as a reference, So I stayed, watched the afternoon practice. I'm driving back to Orange, which is a couple hours. And on the way back, I started saying, if I call him, I'm not going to ever get through. First of all, he doesn't know who I am, except I'm the guy that wrote the letter that he may not have even read. But I said, if I call him, I'm not going to get through to him. So I get home, I'm thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get up and just go up there. So I go in, my family is anxious to see me, and I said, well, don't get so excited, I'm leaving again in the morning, early. So I drive from Orange back up here the next morning to College Station. I go to G. Riley White, I'm there at 6 o'clock. I'm on the front doorstep, G. Riley White. And I wait, and about 7:30 or so, the secretary comes to the front door, got keys. And, she said, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm here. I'd like to see Coach Ballard today. She said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I really don't. And she said, does he know you're coming? I said, no, he doesn't even know me, to be honest with you. But she said, well, today's not a good day. It's his first day on the job. He's got coaches here to interview. He's got people coming in. He's got some media people coming. I said, oh, I understand all of that. That's fine. But I'd just like if there's a minute there where I can get a mind face with a name. I'd like to just be. She looked like she was put out what it probably was. So I go in. I sit there for a good while. Finally, someone comes and said, you want a cup of coffee? I said, that'd be great. So I get a cup of coffee. And people are like just coming in and out. We're on the second floor at G. Riley White. And he had a big office in the back. He came into the back door. So I'm sitting there with all these people coming in and out. So right before noon, she comes and said, you know, if you're interested in lunch, there's a place at the MSC across the street. I said, oh, no, that's okay, I'm fine. You know, so I stayed there about 1:30 or 1:45. She comes out and says, look, Coach Millard knows you've been here all day. And he has a little window at 4 o'clock, not long. And if you want to wait till 4, he'll see you, but just for a minute. I said, that's great. So at 4 o'clock, I walked in and I sat down and I started telling him all the reasons why he ought to hire me at Texas A&M. And so at the end of the conversation, he says, I don't know what I'm doing yet. I've got different people I'm interviewing. I haven't put the staff together, but I will call you before Christmas and let you know one way or the other. I said, that's great. You know, so I took off out of there and I really felt pretty good about it. You know, you get a feel for something. I've never met the man before. And I got in and I talked just as fast as I could talk. I was sitting up in my seat telling him all the reasons why, you know, I was selling. And his personality, he was more of a thinker, kind of guy smoked the pipe at that time. So he'd take a draw and puff a little bit. And I said, I'll tell you another thing. I was like just talking like that. I was talking my heart out. So anyway, I left. I went home. And one of the reasons I told him I'd been down here recruiting, there was a great running back in East Texas named Bubba Bean, who was a high school All-American player and one of the top recruits. And I'd been down here already recruiting him. So again, to keep working, I get home Christmas Eve, I called Bubba to see how he's doing, and he lived in Kirbyville, which is not too far from Orange, 50 miles or something. So I said, what are you doing today? He said, well, my friend and I are going down to Beaumont Christmas shopping. I said, really? I said, you ought to come on over to Orange. My brother's having a barbecue. And this was all legal back then. You could entertain them, do whatever. I said, why don't you come over here? So he did. So okay, we may do that. So sure enough, he came over. So Christmas Eve, 1971, we were over, I got Bubba Bean, his buddy, and my brother, we were barbecuing, phone rang, and my brother said, sometime I want to talk to you. So I go in there and said, we're Millard. And he told me he's going to hire me, offer me a job. I said, I'll take it. And I said, man, I'm excited, Coach. I said, you want to talk to Bubba Bean? He said, yeah, as soon as we get back after Christmas, go to work. That'll be one of the first places we'll go. I said, no, do you want to talk to him right now? He said, what are you talking about? I said, I got him right here. So come on. I left the phone in the house. I said, Bubba, I can explain all this later. But you know, it's a long way from Kirbyville to Kansas State. And I said, your mother, you know, would be able to come see you. I just took a job at Texas A&M. I think that's a better place for you to go than Kansas State. So I put him on the phone. So anyway, that's kind of how I got here. Stayed here for 7 or 8 years, left, went to Southern Cal as defensive coordinator for a year. When the coaching change here, I came back as assistant head coach and stayed in 89, became head coach in 2002. So I've been here over 40 years now. And it's been a great place to be. But over that period of time, I started off in Orange, Texas, poor family, scrambling, shining shoes, throwing newspapers, working in the supermarket, working in refineries, just scratching and clawing, trying to get up that pole a little bit. And so I admire you and what you people are doing. I've always been so impressed with our students here, but you are a special group. So it's my honor to be here with you and talk to you about whatever you want to talk about.
And Coach, can we tighten up the shot a little?
Can you scoot over a little bit just so we can get you in the camera? Perfect. Challenges you had facing your career and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think in any business you're gonna have challenges. And we had a lot of them. You know, when we first came here, you know, A&M has really exploded in recent years. But we had some things, some image issues to overcome. We had some logistics getting in here. It's not as easy to fly into here as it is to Austin or some other places. So I think at any time, whatever your product is, whatever you're doing, our challenge here was to say, let's talk about all the potential liabilities. If someone is recruiting against us, what are the things, and we knew those things from hearing it recruiting, what are the things that people use against us in a negative way? Let's fully understand those and understand how we can counter those. What's the counter? One of the things we had that people would use against us, we had for a whole bunch of time, and it's increased now, but we had a really, really small minority population. And so people recruiting against us, a lot of them had a whole lot more social life, just day-to-day friendship people to offer with minorities. So he said, that's something that's real. It's honest, it's real, they use it against us. Now, how can we counter that? So my counter to that was, this is a big old world. And a lot of times, a lot of young men, for example, the African-American players, some of them we would recruit from maybe South Dallas, where they lived in an all-black neighborhood. And everyone they knew and dealt with as high school students were pretty much from the black community. And over a 3-hour drive to come down here to school, it just pretty much flipped them. So I had another thing I would talk to them. I would confront it. I wouldn't let it just people beat me up with it. I'd try to get it out early. So here's the deal. You've got great potential, but this is a big world we live in. And when you get ready to go after college, you should not limit yourself at all now. You should want to come out of college and be prepared to go anywhere in the world and have the confidence that you can walk in any office environment, anywhere you go and be comfortable. And I said, you can stay at home with your mother, or you can go to an all-black college and you can lessen a little bit of the stress up front. But sooner or later, you're going to have to address those issues if you have ambition to be anybody of any substance at all. To be it, I said, I want you to come out and be able to walk down to Houston, the tallest building down there, and go up on the top floor and walk in and present yourself, or do that in Dallas or New York City. And so we tried to use that as a counter to some of the negatives. So, and we had other things like that we tried to assess the things that we used against us. Small town, small little college town. Well, that can be a positive thing too. If you're studying and there's a whole bunch, get to know each other, and just whatever it is, you got to figure out a way to put your spin on it and make it something that works for you instead of against you.
Great.
And regardless of what the challenge is, you have to do that. Say, you know what, we're not going to sit and say, oh God, we can't do this, we got this. Because you can go through, it's like life. You can figure out all the reasons why you can't achieve, or you can figure out all the reasons why you can and will. And so that's the mindset you want to say, hey, we can overcome whatever there is, we can overcome it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So kind of getting a little more specific into the startup. So how would you say the recruiting process is kind of like customer development, customer discovery, how you find your customer?
Well, first of all, it's an ongoing process. The way it works, when I was an assistant and then when I was a head coach, the way we did it, you divide up areas into geographical areas, much like maybe a company would do with their sales force. So a whole lot of my career, I had the Dallas area, but over time I had Southeast Texas and Louisiana, and part of the time Southern California. So the first place is going the people you're going to deal with. In this case was high school coaches. So they're the ones to ever get to the players, you have to go through them. They might be the company manager or something in your business. But you have to go through them, and a lot of times, the whole thing was about developing a trusting relationship with them. And to spend enough time with them where you gain their confidence and gain their trust, that you would do right. If you recruited one of their players, that you would treat him right and it'd be a good experience. And then after you did recruit one and it worked out successfully, then the more you do that, the more you can go back and the more you've got you a place where you can count them. They know you and you know them. One of the things is spending enough time to get to know who you can trust, who I can trust. I go to one guy and he said, oh, Coach, I got 4 guys for you. Well, when I looked at him, he didn't have anybody. He had never had a big-time prospect, didn't know what one looked like. So at some point, what he said didn't have much meaning. But over time, by spending time with the customer, I get to know guys who say, that guy tells you he's got someone, you better look, because he's had some really good players, and he knows one. And sometimes I go, he said, I don't have anybody this year. But then what I would do, from time to time, I'd go back and visit that guy. So I know you don't have anybody. I just want to come by and say hello, see how you're doing. And so I'm building bridges with that guy in his program. And so you get literally hundreds of customers that you're doing this. So then once you get that, then when you get the young man, you get the name, you start sorting through that to figure out the one you want to in fact offer. And then the recruiting process starts full time. And over the years, you work to get them down to your spring, to your camps or recruiting weekends, and you start meeting with them and spend time with their families, getting to know them. And I'd say that, and this is a basic that you can count on, any meaningful relationship involves trust. If you're going to have any kind of relationship with a customer, with a friend, with a spouse, girlfriend, or whatever, if there's not trust there, you're not going to have much of a relationship. So one of the things when you're dealing with people in a customer relationship, it's absolutely imperative that you have total integrity, total honesty, and a lot of times, even if you say, I may lose this account, but I'd rather lose it being honest than to gain it by being dishonest, because sooner or later the truth always comes out. And if once you have lied to a person, you'll be a liar in his or her mind for a long, long time. It's terribly hard to ever outlive a lie once you've told one. So I'd say that whole thing in recruiting is about trust. The family, I'd go in a home and have to convince that mother that I was going to take her most prized possession and take him away from home, and they will know, what are you going to do with my son? What, if I trusted you, what are you going to do? So there were things that you said and pledges that were made, and you had to uphold those. If you didn't, it would come back and bite you. And you might as well write that school off, because you can't go back. If that kid goes back or his parents go back and tell that coach or the coach. So you got the parents, coach, kids, all those variables, and it's utmost that your integrity's intact. Now, I had one time I had a former A&M player who had a son, and he was being recruited by some as he played high school quarterback and played some defensive back. So some people recruited him as a quarterback. A whole lot of people. He wanted to be a quarterback, and in my opinion, I didn't think he could play quarterback. So now I got a problem. I got an Aggie son who's being highly recruited. A lot of people, in my opinion, I thought people were lying to, because I didn't see him being a quarterback. And it would have helped us if I had told him that he was going to be a quarterback. We'd have probably gotten him. But I couldn't lie to his dad. And I said, and I told him, I said, look, we want to recruit your son. I'm offering him a scholarship. I have to be up front with you. We're not recruiting you to play quarterback. I said, it may cost us him, but the last thing on earth I'm going to do is lie to you about your son. So, long story short, other people did, and he went somewhere else. But I still see the dad to this day. We're still friends. He told me many times, I respect you so much because you didn't lie to me. And later on, I recruited some of his other players because of my honesty. It cost me that one guy, but in the long run, I didn't have the dad going around telling all of the high school coaches that SOB lied to me about my son. So, anyway.
All right. Well, kind of going off that, motivationally speaking, how do you get your players behind you to really follow your lead? Because in startup, it's hard to get employees to come help you when you're not necessarily making a lot of money, the offense.
We had a saying in coaching that I think really has some meaning to it. And we said, they don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you've got employees that have a real sense that you care about them and have their best interests at heart, to me, the best leaders are people that demonstrate, and not only demonstrate, it's a genuine thing. They realize that to have a successful operation, it takes everyone. We had in coaching the word team, T-E-A-M, which is an acronym for us, for together, each achieves more. So if all of us, you're all employees in here and mine, if we can all work together it will be better for all of us. And I firmly believe, I'm totally convinced of this, and I've seen it many times over. You can go into a work situation, and you can be a hard-charging, driving person that, by dang, I'm going to the top, and I don't care who gets away, I'm gonna run over and I'm gonna do that. You can have success doing that for a while. I've seen coaches have some success for a period of time, but what happens in short time, good people that have personal pride, that are really good performers, they're gonna leave. And they'll have other opportunities. They'll be gone. This one leave, this one leave. So pretty soon, all you're left with is the ones that aren't attractive, that can't get other jobs. So you're left with the losers, and all of a sudden, it starts going the other way. Because all the good ones say, I don't have to take that. I don't have to, I got more pride in myself. I don't have to be treated that way. So to me, having a team, putting a group of people together, saying, hey, we're in this thing together, and we're gonna have fun doing it, we're gonna work hard. I have a little saying about, first of all, treat other people like you'd like to be treated. And another little saying about leadership is you have every right as a leader of an organization to be demanding. And you should be demanding. You should set high standards. But you never have a right to be demeaning to another human being. And if you got someone that you have every right to say, look, I'm not happy with the way this is going. I'm not happy with your performance or whatever, but you have an obligation to treat that person as someone special. That's one of God's creations. Every human being has a basic worth, and you have a right to try to get it like you want it, but you have an obligation to treat that person with respect. Maybe even to the point that they can't work for you, but you can do that with respect. You say, this thing is just not working out, and I think you'd be better off working somewhere else, but you never have a right. And we've all seen people that somehow feel like they have a right that every so often they can just lose it. And you get tired of that. And you get maybe one time you can lose it and get away with it. But if you do it over more than one time, the next time, oh well, he's at it again. And then I think it's kind of like having children. You know, the more if your way of motivating is you just screaming and yelling, what happens? Some of y'all haven't been kids that long ago. What happens? You get tutored out. Oh, she's on her deal today. It just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. You know, so I think those little or simple thoughts, but dealing people, everybody likes to be treated with respect. Everybody likes to be treated like they are special, because they are. And I've seen head coaches, I've seen coaches to players, I've seen head coaches to assistants who just unbelievable how they treat them. And I don't think that works over time. I think the great organizations, there's a great respect among the people, and respect for each other, respect for the leadership. They've had this in the military. There's been a lot of studies about leadership, and it goes way back, all the way back to the Greeks. And if people believe in a cause, if they believe in the leader or the cause, they will follow you to the world's end. But if you don't, it's just a matter of time where they won't. I knew a coach once. I know, I still know a coach who was a coach. But he was one of these, dang, you do it my way, you're going to do this, and just a brutal kind of guy with his assistants and with the players. So then one day he was doing that, you know, and it was by dang his way or the highway and all. And he's the head coach, he's in charge. Well, that worked great till one day he shows up at practice and they're getting ready to go out and there's nobody out there. So he goes into training and says, well, what's going on? He said, Coach, I said, they're not going out. I said, what? They're not going. They're not going out. So you got the whole team. So now how bad are you? Well, you know they're going to kick every one of them off the team. You know how this is a major college situation. So who won that battle? He had ultimate power for a while, and he had guys for a while went along with it. But in the end, that approach cost him his job. It wasn't, it was about 3 weeks or so after that when they had a new coach. So anyway,
All
getting people to work with
yeah.
you is a lot better deal.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, what piece of advice do you have for people trying to, get out there and make a name for themselves, just like you did, going up to Coach Ballard and just, kind of forcing his hand? Like, what advice do you give to you?
Well, I think, the great thing that as you go through life, each of you have a reputation now, and as you get out in the business world, that will grow. And I tell people, probably a lot of you have heard that story about the pond story. When you go out here to this lake down here, right on my farm, to a pond, and you pick up a pebble, throw it over the far side, it hits kaplunk, and the little circles start going out. And you throw one over here, and one circle. So they just keep getting bigger, and the more you throw it, finally, those circles all start overlapping. And that's the way your life is. Every day, you're throwing little pebbles wherever you go. Maybe just a janitor in the dorm, or it may be some guy at the grocery store, at the 7-Eleven, you're in a hurry, you stop to get a cup of coffee, that guy, that lady in there. But how you treat them, over time, you are building your reputation. And if you do it in the business world, as you go, the people you call on, where you go, every time you go, little by little, you're making your reputation. And I used to tell my players, the NFL guys comes in at the end of 3 or 4 years to look at our players to draft. And I tell the players, the first thing they come to me and want to know all about this guy. And I said, you are making, from day one, you're making your reputation. If you have been a hardworking, honest, dedicated player, if you've been someone that never misses a meeting, if you've been someone that has no drug issues, if you're a guy that takes great pride, all those things, that's what I'm going to tell them. But I'm not going to lie. If you've not been those things, I'm not going to lie for you. So I'm telling you right now, you all have clean slates, but you will make your reputation over the next 3 or 4 years. And then, because I want to help the guys that should be helped. Now, I had a guy here, a wonderful guy, who had a tragic accident this past year, a young man named Larry Kemp, who was a linebacker for me, fell off a windmill deer hunting. He's actually got a son here at school now. But he was a player here, he's a civil engineering student, and later graduate. Just a prince of a guy. Had talent, not great talent, but he had enough talent, good talent. But his character, his intelligence, his effort, his pride, all those things made him a heck of a player. So during the draft his senior year, I got a call from the Los Angeles Rams at that time. And the Rams go down to St. Louis, ran to LA. And so the head coach called me and said, tell me about Cam. I said, man, I knew the guy. I said, you got to take him. I said, the guy is better than whatever you're seeing on film. He's better than that. He'll make your team better. He's a great guy. He's smart. He's everything you'd want in a player. So they took him. He played 7 years with the Rams. He played a year with the 49ers. And finished after 1 year, came back here, finished his civil engineering degree, and really heck of a guy. All that up. All I did was relate what I had seen and observed. And so you're all at that stage right now that you're making your reputations every day. And as you get out more and more into business, wherever you go, whoever you deal with, you say, well, that's just one guy here. Well, there's one guy there, one guy here, one lady here, whatever. And then as your career, so at some point in your career, you'll be a trustworthy, hardworking, honest guy that you can trust, whatever, all those things, or you'll be something else that's not too good. So that's how you do that. It's just simple. I mean, it's not a complex formula. It's very simple. You do the right things and handle yourself in the right way, be respectful of other people, take pride in your work, show up on time, a little ahead of time. I mean, that sounds so simple, but I tell you, that is the worst thing you can do in a business relationship. Everybody's time is valuable. I used to have those meetings that I had. I'd always have a coach by the door. If we had a 4 o'clock meeting, at 4 o'clock that meeting was starting, that door was closed, locked. We had, one year we were playing TCU in Fort Worth, and we had 100 players, you know, managers, trainers, players, whatever, coaches. So, and I'd always, at the pregame meal, it's okay, we're going by my watch, and I've got 7:20 right now. So the bus leaves at 8. So I'd get on the bus, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes late, I'd be there, and it's come time, it's okay, let's go. So we're pulling down the street in Fort Worth, and we had one guy was on the bus, and I could hear the kids hollering on the back. We get about halfway down the street, go, time just came out. I never looked back, because it keep going. So we had to take a taxi to the stadium. And then I didn't start him in the game. So after that, we, you know, it went for a long time. I didn't have to talk much about punctuality. When you have a meeting, whether it's a sales, just a one-on-one meeting or a larger meeting, everybody's time is valuable. Everybody has things that's important to them. So if we have a 4 o'clock meeting and there are a couple of people aren't here, so now I have to decide, all these people have managed their time to get here on time. So do I wait now for the 2 selfish people who didn't manage their time and wait until they get here, make all of you sit, or do I go ahead and start the meeting, get 5 minutes into it, they come in and kind of distract the meeting, and then they missed all of what I said in the first 5 minutes. So now I have to take my time at the end of the meeting and go back and bring them up to date on what I said at the front of the meeting. That's a very selfish thing, very selfish. And people in the business world, they take offense to that. Their time is valuable. Good business people are very organized, and one of the most precious things you have is your time. No one has more than you have, but they all have the same amount. And when you start stealing someone else's time, that may seem like a little deal, and I think it's, I don't want to slam on your generation, but I don't think somebody taught y'all those lessons like they were taught in my generation. I say 4 o'clock, you can bet I'll be there before 4 o'clock, and we'll be ready to do whatever it is we're supposed to do. And that's a little thing, but I tell you, it's a big thing in the business world.
All right, perfect. Well, now we're actually going to open up the floor for some Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. Got one in the back.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. It's been really great listening to you so far. So I just got a couple closely related questions. One, what sort of tactics did you use to keep your team and your staff motivated? And 2, what sort of tactics did you use to keep yourself motivated?
Well, the first one kind of relates to the second one. If you don't keep yourself motivated, you can rest pretty much assured that the others are looking to the leader. And if you're not motivated, everything slows down a little bit. In most cases, you may have some highly energized people that are looking to move. They're looking to get your job or do whatever. They may have a great self-motivation factor. But so I think it's important in whatever you're in, no one stays the same. No company stays the same. No team stays the same. And no matter, they've got unbelievable records like in the National Football League, for example. If you check the record of Super Bowl winners and see what they did, a lot of times they don't even make the playoffs. So it's really, really hard. I read a book, Pat Riley had a book several years ago I wrote it. He called it the disease of me. That sometimes when you're climbing the mountain trying to get a season or a particular product going or something, that everybody just kind of sacrifices themselves and works together in a real collaborative type way. And then once you kind of hit the big number or have the championship season, then you kind of catch your breath and back off, and if you're not careful, the next thing, it's so hard to say, you know what, that fiscal year is over. You know, July the 1st or whatever your fiscal year, it doesn't matter if we led the nation in this or that or whatever it is. That one's done. What can we learn? What can we do to get better? And to have a chance to be as good as we were last year. You know, it's no automatic. That just because, well, yeah, we got it down. We know how to win. We know how to sell this product. We got good product. It's happening in business. I mean, you could go through, you've got people in this room more knowledgeable than you could count companies that were unbelievable companies that had products that everybody in America used and liked, and now they're out of business because they rested on those products, and other new products came by and people don't even use that anymore. And they weren't I got the CEO of General Electric's a friend of mine, Jeffrey Emo, and we talk all the time. They're always looking to reinvent. You know, I think they just sold their GE appliance arm of their business. They just got rid of it. And that's what, when I was a kid, you know, GE washers and dryers and all that was the big deal. And you know, now they're making jet engines and doing all kinds of things. They're actually got a project going with the NFL for ways to diagnose. A young man a while ago with the helmet thing. GE's working on a way to diagnose head injuries with the electronic helmet kind of apparatus. And so you got to be saying, you got to be, what can we do better? What can we do better? How can we be better? How can each individual? So motivate your people, I think, is creating an atmosphere where we're never satisfied. And it's one of the attributes of the great players that I've known in my career. I've been fortunate to be around. I had over 50 of my players go to the National Football League. And I've known when I was at Southern Cal, Marcus Allen won the Heisman Trophy and was a great player. Great players are never satisfied. They'll come off a game and the average fan will say, man, he played great. He had a great game. If you ask him, he said, man, I missed a tackle there in the third quarter. I should have made that tackle. I should have caught that pass in the second quarter. I should have made that field goal. I made 5, but I should have made the 6. You know, so they're great players. And it's always an attribute that I look for. Guys that was always trying to be better. They were hard on themselves, if you will. That they had high expectations and they never got satisfied. They never said, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. You know, if you start doing that, you're going that way. We say in coaching, you never stay the same. You either get better or you're going behind. And there's somebody else out there that's getting better. So those are all, that's universal. That won't change. You know, whatever it is you're doing, there's somebody out there working to do it better right now. So if you want to stay ahead or stay up front, you better be fighting and scratching and scrambling to try to do it, because that's the way it works. And there's a certain amount of, you ought to relish that. If you may have the right stuff, you like that. You like that environment. And that's what makes great competitors, great leaders, great companies go, is they embrace the fact that they've got to be good. They've got to be good every day, and they got to be working at it.
We have any more questions? All right, let's do one in the back.
My name is Ritesh. I'm foreign, so I'm still understanding football, and hopefully I'll get it, but I'm a big fan. And my question is, if you're trying to implement a new idea to your team, which is a little alien to the rest of your team members, what is the best strategy you would use in order for them to accept this new approach?
I think one of the things you'd like to do as a leader is create an environment where you welcome. I think it's a delicate thing in business or on a football team of analyzing what you do and not throwing out things that are good for you, but always embracing new ideas. So you don't want to be something just always, you know, new deal and throwing out the old, because there's some things that have lasting value. So I think creating a culture where people embrace new ideas, where it's part of your culture. You embrace new ways of doing things. You're looking. I was just on last week at a company that I really admire is Nike. And when I was a coach here, I was on the Nike staff for 14 years. And after the season, they take the coaches on the Nike staff on a trip somewhere. And on that trip, you have a business meeting. They talk about all the new ideas they have and what's going on. And they're a fascinating company. Phil Knight, the CEO, was with us. This past week, they started 3 years ago bringing a Nike legend on the trip every year. So last week, my wife and I was a Nike legend. We went to Nevis out in the West Indies. And Phil Knight, the CEO, was there. And one of the interesting things, a whole lot of their staff that I first met in 1989 when I went on Nike staff, a whole lot of those key people still there, which I think is a real positive. That company, all the same core, that group was there. Phil Knight was on the trip with us. But in the business meeting, this company it's been, I mean, it's a big time New York Stock Exchange, great company. And but they're always looking for they're not selling the same old shoes, same old, it's new stuff. And for example, they had, this makes sense, but it's changed this much in just the last few years, that it makes sense that if you are a 300-pound offensive lineman, the movements you make in a game of football are a lot different than a 200-pound running back that's cutting and darting. So when you look at the configuration of cleats and what stresses are on the cleats of one player versus the other player, they're a whole lot different. So they have, through computers and sensors and whatever they've designed, they actually have 3 models of shoes that they use for different players. So that's one area they've changed. Another area, just on this last trip, you'll hear more about it. Their newest initiative right now is female sports apparel. They've got a Target store, it got one in London and one in Beijing and one in New York City, I think. All women Nike store, all women material, no men equipment in there or apparel, just women. And they've got other stores where they have reversed the order. When you walk in the store, the first thing you see is the women's apparel. And then the men might be upstairs or in the back. And so that's, and they've got all, you know, they had a deal on this trip, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they had a deal on with the women. They said, you know, these women work out and everything, and he asked the coach, first of all, in the meeting like this, a room, like they had 20 active coaches, current coaches. National champion Urban Meyer was there for Ohio State. So they made all the men get in the back, all the women come up front. And so then one of the director of their research guys was there. So one of the things they said is a huge issue that most women never have a bra that fits a sports bra. And so one of the things they did for all the wives that were there, they had a staff person there that was going to measure each of them and give them a fitting sports bra to work out in. And that sounded like a kind of a simple thing that, you know, I would have never thought about. But this is a new deal. So, you know, we're appealing to you. We want you to feel comfortable in what you're wearing and the colors and all those things. So they're not sitting back saying, hey, since the last trip I went on in 2002, their stock was about $43 a share, and it's 98. The last week was $98 a share. But they're not sitting back on what they've done. They're working and going. So I think that's universal. Whatever you're doing, you can't rest on your laurels. You as a person, as a leader, and you've got to create a culture where the people working for you know how you are and what the culture is. And you got to say, hey, we got to get better. We got to get better, and we got to be out front of the next good thing that can help us be better. We got to find it. Whether it's a new drill, I watched the tape today you know, with all the head interest and everything, new tackling drills for football. And what they've done, it's really funny how something, the new thing is an old thing. When I was a kid, of course, the game of football originally came from rugby. And so in rugby, they had no helmets, and they had a way of tackling. And when I was a kid, we played tackle football out in the pasture, out in the field. And no one ran up there and just stuck their nose in the thing. You didn't have helmets or face bars. So you had a way you tackle with your shoulder and wrapped up and got guys down. So now this whole thing's evolved. I saw a great video today that has been made by the Seattle Seahawks, teaching in practice. They had shots of their coaches teaching in practice in shorts and t-shirts, and then in their games in full pads, and then they would splice in a rugby shot with the same thing of teaching the different elements of using the shoulder instead of the head. So that's very innovative. That's what they're teaching. They were in the Super Bowl, and that's what they're teaching their guys. So they're out front of trying to say the game's changing, and we got to change with it.
I think we had a question right here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How do you define a leader? What do you look for in a leader, especially when you're dealing with a team full of guys, and how do you pick out those leaders?
I don't know. There's been so many ways to define that. In my mind, a leader is someone that can get other people to do things that are good for them and good for the leader, and just a desired action, getting a group of people. If I could get y'all to do anything here, in a way that would be beneficial to you. Like if I pull out a gun and start shooting in here and say, y'all get out of that door, there'll be a bunch of people going, that's not a good thing. I mean, that'd be a form of leadership. But that's not good. So I'm talking about saying something that the skill, and over the years, I've talked, I was always interested in this. I've talked to generals and corporate leaders and people, and almost all of them have the same thought, that there may be a small number of people that just have zero leadership ability. They just don't want to be a leader and they've got no ability. But there's quite a number of people that have leadership ability. Some never develop that ability. Others may go for years and not develop it, and then life puts them in a circumstance where all of a sudden they emerge as a leader. There have been classic stories in the military where guys were just nondescript kind of guys and got in the heat of the battle, and all of a sudden the guy jumps up and takes charge and leads the troops and takes over a tough situation. And so I think everybody has got the capability, a whole lot of people. I'd say there'd be a whole lot more that have leadership capabilities than ones that don't. But of the ones that do have it, a whole lot of them just never develop. They never take the time to say, you know what, why don't I take charge here? Why don't I lead this team? And then there are others, like I have to say, when I was a little kid, and they said, who wants to jump up and try this? But hey, let me try it, and I think there's some of that in people who say, hey, let me, and if you've got a reluctance or a fear of failure, like if you're standing there, say, okay, who wants to ride the bicycle? Who can show, who thinks they can ride it? And say, hey, I think I can ride it. So there has to be an absence of fear to a degree of saying, yeah, I may make a fool of myself, or I may fall off of that thing, or so that kind of an attitude keeps some people from leading. That would have the ability, but they just don't want to quite take the chance. So I think there's a certain amount of saying, let it rip. If I'm your age, I say, hey, and particularly in business, say, I'm going to do everything I can to make it work. But if it doesn't, then I'll learn from that and I'll make it work the next time. And leadership, and this is a great quote I heard, leadership is not about never failing. That's not what leadership is about. Failing and getting up and trying again, and maybe failing again and getting up and trying again, and then every time you're developing a little more strength of character, so that when big things come down the road, you don't blink. You look around and say, I'm not worried about that. We're going to do this. And so you have developed your character over time, where that you don't have a fear of failure. I saw Nicholas one time said, he looks at putts back when he was in his prime. He would look at putts and try to say, is it going up or down, does it break this way? So he said, when we get up over the ball, I said, I'm going to putt it, I'm going to try to put a good stroke on it, it's going to either go in or it's not. If it doesn't, I'll go putt the next one. You can't say, oh God, this thing's for $50,000, I got to make it, and you see, get yourself all locked up. They say, over fear of failure. Fear of failure is an awful thing. So sometimes, and I think as you go through life, you have to learn to talk to yourself. Sometimes you'll be the best, you'll talk to a lot of people, you hear a lot of bull from me tonight, but the best talker you'll ever hear is yourself. And talk to yourself, and talk yourself through situations, and ask a lot of why nots. Why not me? So over time, there's a great book, and I haven't read it in a while, but there's a book called Self-Talk Solutions. And the author's name is Chad Hempstetter. And the book has a premise about how when you're born, everyone has kind of a clean slate when you first come into the world. And then little by little, when you're a little kid, people start putting stuff in your computer. And they're putting files, and what you put in is what you get out. So you're putting stuff in. So they're saying, oh, he's a little toot, he acts up all the time, and, he's a little hellion or whatever. So over time, each of those thoughts go in and attach to a like thought. So over time, you get this kid that's 13 years old, thinks he's a little bad guy, or thinks he's not very smart, or thinks whatever. None of it's ever been proven to be true. It's just things that people have put on him and put in his mind, or her mind. And so he makes a great point. Look, Terry Bradshaw, some of y'all might see him on TV, the TV announcer. He was a great NFL quarterback, but he came out of high school. He didn't do well on the test, which meant he ended up having to go to Louisiana Tech. not a bad school, but he couldn't go to higher level school because of his grades. So then he got the deal that he was not smart. So then he goes in the NFL as a rookie and he doesn't play very well. So then it's all more and more, they're putting the stuff on him. So then he ran across this guy and got this book and started. So he ends up, I think they won 3 or 4 Super Bowls. He ended up being he's on TV every Sunday there in the NFL. But it was a point that people put all kinds of thoughts in your mind, a lot of time negative. And no one's ever proved that those, you just accept them. So you gotta accept that I can't do this or that. So say, hey, you know what, I can't do that. I'm going to. And little by little you can change how you look at things and say, why not? So it's a whole lot gets back to you and what you're willing to tell yourself. Obviously, you people in here are all past that bridge a long time ago because you feel pretty good about what you're doing.
We have one in the back. Yep. Yeah, did you ever have a really influential mentor that you can attribute career success to? And what do you attribute to that mentor?
I had people all through my life that really helped me. If I had to single out one guy, it would be when I first came to A&M. There was a guy in Dallas. I had Dallas recruiting here, so this guy I got to know in Dallas, that Von Bright, this Bright Athletic Center and all that, but he was in the oil and gas business and all kinds of every business there is he was in. But he and I got to be friends. I think he saw me as a young guy that he could polish on, and one of the real benefits to me was that he kind of took me under his wings. I stayed at his house quite a bit when I was up there recruiting, and just saw how he did things and got his wisdom. And there's so many times, like he told me the great story that I've used when he was in school here at the library. And back then, people checked out a lot of books, and there wasn't any online reading about those things. So he was in petroleum engineering. So he goes by, Dr. Vance was the department head, Harold Vance. So he says, Bob, would you do me a favor? They were all in the building there. So you do me a favor? He said, oh, yes, sir. He thought he'd get some writing books. He said, if you go by the library and pick this book up for me, I really want to get this book. Oh, yes, sir. So he goes to the library, goes in, while the book's checked out. So he had a class. After class, he goes by, stuck his head in, and told Dr. Vance, I went over to the library and checked that book. That book is checked out, and it won't be back till next week. Be back, I'll go get it. He said, so what you're telling me is you didn't get the job done, huh? He said, oh, this thing's going downhill fast. He said, so I know the book was checked out. He said, I know the book was checked out, so I gave you a job to do, and you came back and you gave me an excuse for not getting it done. Yes, so he left, and he said, God, I screwed that deal up, He said, so then he goes back to the library and asks Lionel, can you tell me who has that book? Who's got it? So it was another professor. He goes to his office, goes in and asks him, if he's about finished with the book. He said, yeah, I've been finished for a couple of days. I just haven't had time to turn it in. He said, would you let me go turn it in for you, Dr. Vance? He said, oh, that'd be great. So he goes to the library, checks it back in, and it checks out. Dr. Vance brings it back over in his office. I got the book for you. He said, Harvey, I hope you learned something from that. First time I gave you a job to do, and you came back and gave me a good excuse for not getting it done. But what you'll find out as you go out in this world, there will be as many excuses as the human mind can conjure up for not getting the job done. But you'll find out in this world, they don't pay off in excuses. They pay off in finding a way to get the job done. And I was a young coach then. I'd tell a coach, I need to see so-and-so over the door. Well, coach, I called over, he wasn't there. I said, well, did you go to his roommate? Did you go to his suite mate? Or did you go, were you just willing to accept? And so I want you to do from now on, every time you get ready to not do something, or can't do, I want you to say, if I exhausted everything, or I'm just looking for a reason not to get this done. And those kinds of lessons, he was it's a philosophical thing. I say, I'm going to turn over, I'm going to find a way to get it done. I'm going to keep going. I'll find some way to get this thing done. We took off one time, Coach Sherman, who was here a few years ago, was an assistant of mine, and we had a young man named Leland McElroy down in Beaumont that was a great recruit, big time recruit. So we got to the point where we had a visit for me to go into school, but I couldn't go in there with Coach Sherman. The way the rules were, we couldn't both be there. So we went to the school, and I got a jersey made up and put McElroy on it, put his name. So I go to school, meet the young man, they take him to the library. The library gave me a room to meet with him. And I said, I got something I want to show you. So I bring him over the window, and I got Sherman out there holding up his jersey with McElroy on it. So that was one of our sales deals. That little gimmick, the sales gimmick. You know, he thought that was really something. It wasn't legal for Mike to come into school, but he could be out there standing outside. So we had that jersey out there. We ended up getting a kid. Now, who knows, that was just one of the things that we did of saying, we're going to find everything we can do to get this sale, get this deal done. Turn over every stone. Find a way to get the job done. Find a way to get the sale done. Told me another story. Mom told me this is another sales story. So he's out in West Texas in the oil fields, and he's buying early in his career, buying leases and coming back to Dallas and trading leases. So he goes out for this one deal, hot area, old farmer guy, and he can't get the lease. He can't get it, tried everything, offered his money, can't get anything. So he's in there one day, and the lady is at the house at this little farm. The dad was out, the husband was on the tractor or something. And he told the lady, he says, is there anything that I could do to get this lease, to get him to sign that lease? And she said, well, there's one thing. He said, what is it? He said, you know, I've wanted forever my daughter to be able to take piano and have a piano and play it. If you can get me a piano for my daughter, I'll get the lease for you. So he goes in town, goes and finds a place and buys a piano and brings it out there. Got the lease. It was a huge deal, you know. He tried every way he could imagine. But the one thing he finally said, he said, anything. She said, you get my daughter a piano, I'll get that lease for you. So you got to be looking. Find a way to get it done.
Any question over here?
Chuck Hampton, mentor. By the way, we started in '72 together. I was just a freshman here in the Corps. He was already grown up and employed, but he's only a couple of years older. Coach, these entrepreneurs have ideas, and we help them formulate those ideas to see if they can grow into something meaningful. If they start to become something meaningful, they are officially a startup, and they have very limited resources. And they have great resources from the university, but their resources, their human resources in their team, they don't know who to go recruit, if you would, and they have very limited financial resources. Now, I'm going to take you way back when coaching had very few resources. Let's imagine you were back beyond Bear Bryant and you could only hire 2 coaches. What type of coaches would they be? Now, I'm going to use that as an example for these kids, but what kind of a coach would you get? Knowing you've got to coach a team, what's the 2 perfect things that you need to put together? You only get 2, you don't get 15.
You know, that's a pretty hard question. The first thing I'd say, the guys really better be good teachers. If I can only have 2,
yep,
it really puts a greater. They've got to be. Each guy's got to be able to do more and more capable of more things, and it puts a higher level. You can't miss. If you hire 10 coaches, you might miss on 1 or 2 of them for a short period of time. But you only hire 2, you better not miss. And you better choose carefully.
You're the defensive genius, so I assume you get a good offensive guy. But there's only 3 of you, so there's only 3 on the team, so that means you're going to have to wear a whole lot of hats like these guys do. These guys have to wear way more hats than just the head coach does. And they don't have the resources yet like you had when you were coaching here to be able to have a full staff. But there were times, I'm sure, that you couldn't hire all the people you wanted, but you had to improvise and get the very best that you could.
Well, I think that goes back part of the deal of finding a way to get it done. with limited resources early on, you gotta work, we gotta wear a lot of hats. I think that's been done quite a, when I first came, you'll remember this, right out of here, the Davis Airlines. And you go to the desk at the little, what's now the little private aviation deal. You go in there to get a ticket. Lady would write your ticket out for you. You get ready to get on the plane, the guy would put a hat on, he'd carry your bags out and put on the plane. Then he'd put on his pilot hat, the guy Davis, he and his wife ran.
Same guy.
They signed you in, they loaded your bags, and he gets you there and flies the airplane. So that was Davis Airline, that was our first airline. So they were doing it all.
Yep.
And I think you can go into a lot of businesses and see people that in the early going, they were operating. Phil Knight, Nike, that I just talked about. He and his track coach, a guy named Bill Byron. Now they've got, Nike's got a big, what they call a campus in Copeland, Oregon. And the main drive going in is Byron's Drive, which is his track coach. They worked out of his garage. The first shoes they built, they took a waffle iron, they called it the waffle sole, and they made rubber soles and glued them on the track shoe. Phil Knight ran track at Oregon. And they worked out of the garage and they drove around selling those waffle sole track shoes out of the garage. And he flew down there last week in a G6, and he's worth $20 billion now, but he was working out of the garage and making the shoes and traveling around selling the shoes. And so that's the way that works. You got to do what you can do at the time to make it work. And then when you get to the point that you can hire people, try to hire people smarter than you are. That's a key thing. Try to find people that, because if you don't, you haven't helped yourself much. You know, if you say, you know, I'm doing a lot of work here, I need someone else to help me do it, but if they're not smarter than you are, then you're still loaded down. So try to get someone that can do, you know, like Phil's got people now designing shoes better than those waffle shoes he made. He's got some really bright people with really good equipment that are designing shoes and designing things that he couldn't do.
You know, he said so many brilliant things tonight, but he just hit on one of the top ones. Hire somebody smarter than you, because he doesn't let his ego get in the way. Sure, it was your idea. Sure, you're the head guy of this entrepreneurial team, but he didn't let his ego get in the way, and he hired really good people. And his first answer was, hire 3 really good teachers. They're really good at what they do. I mean, coaching is teaching, and they're really good at what they do. Whether they're computer scientists or whether they're animal scientists, get the very best that you can do. And that's why this man's been so successful, is he surrounded himself with great human resources, and then the financial resources came naturally.
So a lot of people that are heavily motivated and highly dedicated, such as yourself, are they usually have like a turning point in their life, or a reason or a motivation behind all that just kind of comes to them. Do you have one of those? Or?
I had that in my mind. Now that's about to my wife today. I was showing her a picture that I saw, and when I was a child. And my motivation was that I had grown up in a really poor family. My family was uneducated, my dad was uneducated. He realized the importance of education. He told, you know, and the whole thing was great to me. And I'm so thankful. I was never told that, you know, it was someone else's fault that we were poor. I mean, my dad took it on himself. You know, he dropped out of school prior to World War II and dropped out to enlist in the service, and just never got an education. And so with that created a barrier for him. But I was taught that we lived in America, which is a great land of opportunity. And if you were willing to be industrious and work hard and get an education, that you had a chance. I grew up with that belief. It was on me. And I started shining shoes when I was in the 2nd grade. Worked at one barber shop for about a year. It was a barber shop. This is a little country place, you know. But he only had one barber chair. So I got it. There was one down the road that had 2 barber chairs. So I went down there and I figured I could make more money. They had twice as many people coming in there. So I still have my shine box at my house. You can see where I went from 15 cents a shine to 25. So I'd spend all day Saturday on Monday shining shoes, and it's just the feeling of having that pocket full of quarters that I made, you know, was a good feeling. So then I got a little older, and we lived in the projects. These were long rows of duplexes. So I would get on my bicycle, I'd ride to town, and I would buy newspapers. And I'd buy as many as I thought I could sell. So I mean, I was like a young businessman doing my inventory and saying, okay, how many of these think of the ones I didn't sell, I'd have to eat, and then I could go through my profit very quickly. So I had to do a good job of figuring out what I could sell. And then I'd ride my bicycle down through these courts. The paper was the Orange Leader around Southeast Texas. So I'd go down, no air conditioning back then, so you'd riding down the sidewalk calling, Orange Leaders, you know, people would come out the door, hey boy, come here, send me a paper. So I would ride and ride, it's, you know, it may be 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm still riding along there on Sunday morning trying to sell that last paper. And so then I went from that, and I did a good enough job with that they gave me a paper route. And so now I had a whole list of customers in this same project area. So I learned a lot about people. I'd go knock on the door. I figured I had that book and everybody's address and name. And no one was going to collect that money unless I did it. So I figured out very quickly that the only way I get my money is I go knock on doors and ask people for my money. And if they tell me they don't have it, I said, when can I come back and get it? You know? So I started doing that. So my motivation, you ask about it, it was a thing where I wanted to get out of where I was, and it felt good each little step along the way when I had that pocket full of quarters and I got my paper route, and I started working in the supermarket, and then you know, so then I went to college and I coached 2 years in high school, and I continued to go to graduate school at night. So I was going to graduate school at night, coaching, teaching 3 world histories, 2 civics, coaching football, and going to graduate school at night. Because again, I wasn't satisfied. So after 2 years, I got a chance to go to Kansas State as a graduate assistant. And I'd never been to Kansas. I was married, had a child. I go home and tell my dad, I'm going to Kansas State to be a graduate assistant. He said, what's that? I said, well, it's a deal where you work, you know, full time, but then you don't get paid. So how much are they going to pay you? I said, well, I really don't know. He said, what do you mean? So you mean you quit your job? You don't even know what those people are going to pay you? I said, no, it's an opportunity though. It's a great opportunity. It's something I want to do. So every single person that I talked to, that I knew, family and friends, every single one of them told me not to do it, that I was crazy to do it. But in my heart, I said, you know, I can always come back and get a job like I've got. I'm young, and I'm gonna step out there, and I'm gonna put it all on the line. I rented a U-Haul truck, took off, put everything I had in it, and moved to Kansas. And when I got there were 4 guys who had been there in that position the year before me. And so, you know, the logical thing would be that if they hire somebody, if there's an opening, they're probably going to give it to one of these guys. The best job that I can. I'm going to try to be the best one out of these guys. I did that for 1 semester. We had an opening, and they hired me over all those other guys. So just little by little, then I told you the story about Emory and coming to A&M, and so it's been but it was fun. I don't want it to sound like it was some kind of a grind, because it wasn't. It was hard work, but it was fun because I felt like I was climbing that deal, getting, you know, there's nothing that feels better than accomplishing something yourself. And that feeling of feeling like you were getting something done since I was a little kid was always a meaningful thing. So that was my motivation. And I don't know, people have, I guess, different forms of motivation. It never was about making a lot of money. That was as big a thing. And my coaches were always really instrumental in my life. And I thought if I could play that same role in other young people's lives. That's why I'm here this evening. I might get paid for this. I'm taking it evening. I believe in y'all. And it's a great opportunity for me to get in here and share whatever wisdom I might have to say, I'm helping somebody in here tonight might get something out of this. And if it does, it's worth my time, and I'm helping somebody else along the way.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, what's one thing that you consider yourself better at than anyone else, and how's that contribute to your success?
If I had to single one attribute that has been helpful to me, I think it is, I think caring for other people, a respect for other people. When I was in first grade, the local bread company came to school and they had little wooden rulers. And they had on that wooden ruler, the golden rule. Treat other people like you'd like to be treated. So I've always, as a kid, liked to be, I like people, I like to be around people, I like to talk to people. I told someone here recently, I spent through the first few years of my school staying in trouble at school for talking all the time. Now they pay me to talk. I was just practicing for my future. But I mean, I think that's one thing, and I think the hard work, whatever that is that says, I want to get up and get it. I want to get up. I got to be moving. I'm not looking for the soft spot. I like to be able to go. Let's get up and do it. We can do it. Let's go do it. And, so that probably, I don't think I'm particularly smarter than anybody else. And that's the thing I tell you too, most of my experience, the guy I've now had over 40 years here at A&M, and I've met some phenomenal people. You've got a great bunch of people ahead of you that have left some good tracks for you. But I have to tell you that most of them, if just about all of them I've met, would tell you themselves, and I tell you, it wasn't that they were particularly bright people that were just outsmarting everybody. A whole bunch of them would get up early, stay late. They were out working a lot of people, and they would tell you that. They had good intelligence. They treated people the right way, and they worked very hard. They were people that found a way to get the job done. And, I've seen a whole bunch of them. I've been in wonderful places with them, and they live in great lives. But I've got one friend, a close friend in Houston, the oil business, and I've spent a lot of time with over the years. He left here. He went by the Association of Former Students and borrowed enough money to rent a U-Haul to go to South Louisiana for his first job with his wife and boy. And he didn't even have enough money to buy a U-Haul trailer, to rent a U-Haul trailer, didn't borrow the money. And now he's got a house in Vermont, a ranch in South Texas, a ranch in Brenham, and a house in Houston. And so, but he was fighting and scratching.
I was thinking you were free, and I was like, oh, that's you.
Let's get a round of applause for